I answer your questions. What is good, YouTube? It's That One Camera Guy back at it again with another video for you. This is week 3 of Q&A, where I take questions from YouTube on all my videos and I just answer them in this one video. And so if you have any questions, go ahead and make sure you put them down in the comment section below, and I will go ahead and try to answer them in the next week's video that I post every Sunday. If you're new to my channel and you're finding it for the first time, I go by That One Camera Guy. I make videos, tutorials, guides, and reviews on the Sony Mirrorless system. If you'd like to catch the latest content, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and that bell when I produce content every single week on my channel. And my old subscribers, you know what to do. Go ahead and hit that like button, and let's go ahead and get started. First question's from Chin Chan Fuzz. He's asking, is there any possible way that I can take my A6000 and translate it to English? It's a Japanese model. He bought it from Japan. So my recommendation is, I think you can still do the tweak, install Open Memories tweak. I have a video, if you can at least understand some of it, and access the menu option to get all the other languages available on the actual camera. So try it out. I'll try and post a link somewhere up here. Check out that tutorial and see if it works for you. Vinod Palasari asked, can you do a video for the A6000 with the Samyang f2, the 12mm f2? It is on my radar, and when I get a chance to, I will go ahead and review it. Thanks for the question. Ollie asks, something I don't get. People recommend getting faster glass when wanting better low light performance, but that affects your depth of field. I agree. For example, going from f4 to f1.8 has a significant difference in the depth of field at around 80 to 100 millimeters. Isn't it better to get a camera with improved low light performance? Says, I'm thinking specifically in typical indoor sporting environments or kids playing inside, when you don't necessarily want razor thin depth of field. Ollie, here's the situation. When it comes to shooting event sports or sports-like activities indoors or low-light activities, I totally get what you mean. I have yet to see a camera, and now I haven't used the A7S II, that could perform at me shooting at f4 and maintain a decent shutter speed of 1/500th of a second, for example, on high school evening football games or indoor sports basketball. I would typically have to drop my shutter speed incredibly low in order for me to be able to get a decent, just to be able to get a proper exposure. So I would agree that you do want to get the best camera that you can afford, but using prime lenses is sort of the best compromise that you can do. But the thing is, for example, if you're shooting kids indoors or people moving around, if you're shooting with like a 50 or even an 85 millimeter lens at f1.8, the depth of field is not as thin as I would agree on that end. I actually think it's not enough at times. The depth of field is extremely different. I mean, from 200, if you're shooting at 200 millimeters, heck yeah, the depth of field is very thin. But even at 50 or an 85, when I'm shooting basketball, the depth of field is not that thin. But that's just me in my experience. But you are right on the whole front about getting a better camera. It's just that those cameras, like the 1D series, the D5 series, I guess you're going to be looking at the A9, they're really expensive. Chemical Eyes asks, do you know if Sony holds their resale value nowadays? Because when I sold my kit, it wasn't even a year old and I lost some money. All I have to say is that every time you buy equipment or gear, it's going to lose value, period, especially the actual camera bodies themselves. Especially with the Sony market, you end up getting an influx of gray market cameras. So, for example, I bought the Canon 5D Mark IV. I bought that through B&H Photo at full value price. I think it was like $34.99 or whatever it was. And then 3 months later, you saw it on eBay going for $31.99, gray market. And so I wanted to try and sell my 5D Mark IV, but no one wanted to offer me anywhere close to that. They were like, well, I can get a gray market, what have you. And they wouldn't offer me anything below $2,700. So right away, I had already lost about $800 worth of the original value of the camera, and I hadn't even used it a whole lot at the time. So It's not just Sony, it's also the other manufacturers. I just think the lenses will tend to hold their value a little bit longer, but don't expect to say, for example, you buy a lens for $1,600, you're not going to be able to sell it for $1,600. You're going to lose money regardless. It could be 10, 20, 30% of its original value. Just got to keep that in mind. Bo W asked, that one camera bag is nice. Peak Design makes a nice backpack. How do you like the Dell XPS? This was asking about what's in my bag video. He was considering a MacBook Pro because it's cheaper, but not sure if it's going to hold up as good. Now, I am going to be working on a review on the Dell XPS 15, but I can give you kind of a precursor to what my experience has been like. And it's been a mixed bag with the Dell XPS 15. I've only heard good things about it. And what's really strange is that when you hear the tech reviewers on YouTube, they all praise the Dell XPS 15, and all of a sudden you start reading things online, you start hearing problems about the hinge, you start hearing about blue screens of death, you start hearing about stuttering issues in Adobe Premiere Pro, and you're like, where in the world were all of these problems from, right? And so I'm starting to see some of those issues in my XPS 15, and I would just say it could just be my model. So, but I'll be fair, I'll talk about the pros and cons. But I absolutely enjoy using the XPS 15 on the go because it has enough horsepower to edit a video. Like I was able to edit video, and I've been editing all my videos as of late on the XPS 15. I do experience this weird stutter issue where it stops, and sometimes it does happen, a blue screen of death, and it's not like, it happens every other day or so. So it is alarming, and I'm trying to figure out the problem. But it's good. The battery life on it is decent. You'll get the 6 to 7 hours if you're just typing. It's really misleading when people say, well, the Dell XPS 15 has really good battery life. Yeah, when you're not doing anything with the laptop, as soon as you start editing video and you're having to actually edit and do real work on your laptop, it cuts down to 2 hours or less, okay? So you got about less than 2 hours to edit your video in Premiere Pro, and I bought this battery pack on the go for the Dell XPS, which gives me another 30 minutes to an hour. So let's just say I'm going to get 2 hours of hardcore recording time, 2 hours of hardcore editing time on the XPS 15. I don't know what it's like on the MacBook Pro. I would assume the same thing. As soon as you start doing heavy loaded work on it, it's going to slow down too. 4K screen's gorgeous, by the way, on the XPS 15. So if this model doesn't work out, I will absolutely try to get another copy. And because I think it's a solid laptop. I really, really like it. There's just some quirks. Whiteland Warriors 08 asks, if you could only take one lens with you with the Sony a6000, which lens would I take? Man, that is a really tough one. I think, for me personally, it would be between two camera lenses. It'd be the 16-70 f4 and the Makey 35 f1.7. It would be stuck between those two because I like the manual focus prime lens at f1.7, and then the 16-70 is really just a good, decent all-around kit. So I like prime lenses, so I'm going to go with the 35 f1.7, and I can even switch it off with the Sony 35 f1.8. I don't own the Sigma 31.4, but I would even consider that one. So I gave a little bit too many answers. I guess for me, the Makey 35 f1.7, because I just find more joy using that. Tanguy Duhamel asks, hi, I just bought an a6000, but I have a little problem, I think. When I put the camera on, the lens comes out. That's good, but the part of the lens that comes out is kind of loose and wobbly. Is this normal? When I shoot vertical or horizontal, I kind of feel that part of the lens a little bit moves. It's not super loose, but when I shake a little bit, it shakes and makes some noise, if that makes sense. Does anybody also have this problem? Is it normal? It's normal because there's different elements inside of your lens, and also the stabilization elements in there as well, so it is normal for it to kind of shake. As long as it doesn't sound like broken glass, I think you'll be fine. Tanguy Duhamel, I'm assuming it's your kit lens since it's that video in particular, but mine is a little bit loose too, so I don't know. Hopefully someone else can chime in. Adam Graham asked, I have an A5100, but what are some easy Lightroom editing tricks that make your photos look 10 times better? Honestly, this is a question. it's tough to answer, and it's your call on it, really, for a lot of people. I've seen people do really great editing stuff on their mobile phones. There's a lot of filters nowadays that will enhance your images so fast. It's like just an easy on and off switch. Take a look at Lightroom Mobile. They got some really cool filters on there. I've been playing around with it a little bit, and it just makes like, you literally just apply a filter and your photo looks better already. So, Adam, check out Lightroom Mobile. I think it's gotten much better. Lukman Wafai. Hello, I'm considering the Makey 50mm f2 over the Sigma 60mm f2.8. Without the concern of budget, which one would you think would be better for portrait shooting? I would choose the Makey 50mm f2 as it's a little bit wider in the aperture, and I don't know, f2.8 to f2 depth of field wise might be a little bit different. I would go with the Makey. I haven't used the Sigma. I can't really speak on its behalf. So, Lukeman, that's what I would recommend. The Waldo asks, nice tour of the bag. By the way, what are your thoughts on the 16-70 f4? I do enjoy using the 16-70 f4. It's a very versatile lens with a constant aperture. It would be kind of the go-to lens that I would put on my camera, but it's not the one I always use, since I kind of like using primes more. So if you are stuck and you just wanted a good kit lens, if you get a good copy of the 16-70 f4, as others have mentioned, they've had issues in the past. The 16-70 I think is a really solid travel kit lens, and I use it a little bit, but it wasn't really the lens that just makes me like, oh man, I'm gonna enjoy shooting and what have you. But it's a nice lens. It's sharp, and I really like the quality of the images I get out of it. So that's my answer. It's kind of hard to explain. Scott Parnell asks, great info as usual. Do you have a favorite zoom lens for nighttime vlogging and general nighttime street shooting for the 6500 or 6300? Thanks in advance. Aloha. Nighttime vlogging depends on how dark it is. I love my 10 to 18 for vlogging. If I do any type of vlog, if I'm talking to the camera, like even right now, this is a 10 to 18, that's my go-to. I guess it wouldn't be a problem vlogging with it because you're going to drop your shutter speed anyway. As far as street shooting, it's not something I do, and it's really hard for me to recommend a lens in particular. So Scott, really sorry. Hopefully someone can give some recommendations there. So Laisu asks, dear That One Camera Guy, should I buy the NEX7 now for video only? I don't know what the prices are for the NEX7, if it's much different than the A6000. And I think the advantage with the NEX7 is that it has an external mic jack. So if you really want better audio directly straight into the camera, that option is there for you. I haven't used the NEX7 personally, so I can't really give a strong recommendation for something I haven't actually used. But knowing that you're going to deal with some of the overheating issues that already plagued the A6000, maybe you might be lucky you don't have to deal with it. So I'm assuming the NEX7 will be in the same boat. If it were me, I would probably look at different options depending on your personal needs. If you really are dead set on the NEX7, then I don't know. I really have a hard time recommending the NEX7. At this point in time, because of the audio challenges, I mean, I get it. So it's going to be your judgment call on whether or not you're going to want to get it. I really hope some people can recommend better items. If I knew exactly what type of video work you were doing would make sense. Since I don't know, it's really tough. It's really tough for me to say. Martin Doe says, hi, I like to shoot portrait photos. So what's better for me? The A7 II plus the FE 85mm f1.8 or the Fuji X-T2 35mm f1.4, or just save money and wait for the A7 Mark III. Thanks a lot. Love your videos. Thanks, Martin. All right, so here's what I would personally do. I absolutely love the 85mm focal length for portraits, but that's my bias, right? That's my personal bias. I'd be a little concerned with the Fuji X-T2 with the 35mm, because you're getting something like a 50mm equivalent, but you're still really just getting a 35mm equivalent lens. It's just the crop factor. So again, 85 looks a little bit more pleasing to me to the eye. The out of focus area, the compression the lens gives you, I prefer 85mm. Now, whether or not going from the A7 II or the A7 III is going to make a big difference for you really depends on what you want to do. Also, we don't even know what the price on the A7 III is going to be. So it could be $19.99. I don't really know what it's going to cost in your neck of the woods. So should you wait for it? I say don't, because we always play this waiting game, and it's like, well, I'm just going to wait another 6 months. And you're like, well, that was 6 months of your life that you waited, where you could have been spending those 6 months creating new artwork, new portraits, and gaining new experience with your camera gear. Does that make sense? It's like, I don't really advise on the waiting scenario too much, unless we know impending. It's like impending that this camera is going to come out, like we have the actual details, like it's going to be out in next month. But if we don't, get a camera that works for you already and just start shooting. That's my tip. J Morph asks, can you do a video about the A6000 and legacy glass? A lot of us have the A6000 to use with the legacy glass, and it would be great to know what you think of it and what you might recommend. Thanks. Keep up the good work. Thanks, Jay. I will look into that towards the future. I am just not extremely knowledgeable about the whole legacy glass. I'm guessing you're talking about manual focus glass. Unfortunately, prices for those things have gone up already because more people have found out how easy it is to adapt them and such. But yeah, I will definitely keep a lookout for that type of content. JM asks, can I ask something? Should I get the Sony a6300 or the A7? If you're doing portrait type work, then I would push you towards the A7. If you just want more general purpose camera, get the A6300. Has 4K, slow motion video. Again, not knowing a whole lot of what's going on. Again, anytime you're doing portrait type stuff, I would lean you towards the full frame A7. Kurt Bernardo asks, Alpha 6500 or A7 Mark II? Not knowing anything about what you do, I would say the Alpha 6500. Invest in really good glass though. Scott Westerman asks, do you think an A6000 with a nice f1.8 prime would be a better option than, say, a Nikon D7100 with f1.8 primes to shoot wedding portraits? Budget is a big thing for me, so need the best for money. Thanks. If you're trying to catch on the budget side of things, the Nikon's going to be the better bet down the line because you have a lot more third-party options with Nikon. So if budget's already as you're concerned, then go with a Nikon camera. And since you didn't mention video or anything of that sort, then the Nikon's fine. Nikon's great. I mean, go that route. They have a nice 35, a nice 50, and a nice 85. That'll work great with the D7100, and it's not going to necessarily break the bank. So Nikon D7100. 426 Productions asks, I am such a crossroads in my life between the RX100 Mark V, the A9, the A7S II, waiting for an A7S III, or getting an Alpha 6500. What I would say, 426 Productions, if you don't own any mirrorless cameras, is get the Sony a6000 with the kit lens and maybe a cheap prime and just start having fun with it. That's what I would say. Just go out there and start using it, and more than likely you can probably sell it off and then upgrade to a better camera later on in the Sony Mirrorless line if you're dead set on sticking with Sony. Yasita Kasuri, hope I got that right. Hi bro, do you recommend a full manual lens for wild photography? I mean, I don't want to buy Metabones or other stuff that's very costly. If I use normal adapter, will it work? If you know the subject that you shoot with in wildlife photography doesn't move, then a manual lens makes a lot of sense. And there's some really great glass from like Nikon, I would say some manual like telephoto lenses, and even Canon, I would say. So, could you do it? Yes. But if your subject matter wasn't moving a whole lot. So if you know your like I said, if your subject doesn't move, I think it'll work just fine. As far as adapters that go, I mean, the adapter, if you're going to be manually focusing anyway, it's just a pass-through. You just need the adapter to connect to your camera lens. Maybe it might transmit information, maybe it won't. But yeah, that's what all I would say. So if you can't afford the actual autofocus lenses, then manual lens will work on non-moving wildlife. Folks, that is it. Those are all the questions I got this week. If you have any more questions for me, post them in the comments below. I'll answer them next Sunday. And let me know what you think. Help the others out there. Provide some feedback and some responses to some of the questions that I got. I would absolutely love to hear some alternative answer and choices and help your other photographers and videographers out there. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and check out my other content. And with that said, I'm your host, That One Camera Guy, and I will catch you on the next video. Bye.